disclaimer, I am very hungover. My auntie got married. It was all going well until the bottle of port came out. Carrie was a designated driver, so she's fine.
Yep.
But if my voice sounds a bit broken, it's because I am a bit broken. But we're still going to do this podcast.
We can do it. So, hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Nice Cup of History, a podcast where two good friends nerd out about history over a nice cup of tea, or occasionally a glass of wine, or port, with some interesting results. This week, we bring our knowledge a little closer to home by talking about the history of our fair town, King's Lynn. And for our ridiculous death, we learn how the bad luck of a lousy king ran true on a visit to the Fens, and hear a story of a local witch that may still be around. Here goes. Let's get historical. There is some contention over where the word Lynn actually comes from. Some, including King's Lynn Historical Society, believe it derives from the Celtic word Lynn, or the Welsh word llyn, meaning lake or pool, probably due to the tidal lake that used to cover the area when the town now sits. It could also be of Anglo-Saxon origin, with the word lyn meaning a farm tenure or holding. Based on the site where the river Great Ouse, which really isn't an appetising name for a river.
No.
No. I think it just means great water, though.
Why can't it just be called River Great Water?
I don't know. Based on the site where the River Great Ouse meets the Wash, a body of water links the sea along the east coast of England. It's believed that there was an official settlement on the site as far back as the 10th century, so the 900s, but it wasn't recorded as such until the following century. It is mentioned in the Domesday Book, a record of English land holdings and tenancies done following the Norman Conquest, and is noted down as both Lun and Len, being named as belonging to the Bishop of Elmham and the Archbishop of Canterbury. In 1101, a bishop from the nearby town of Thetford, one Herbert de Lozinger, started construction on what is recognised to be the first medieval town on the site, which was located between two rivers named Purfleet and Millfleet, being to the north and south of the town respectively. He also commissioned the construction of a church dedicated to St Margaret. He then organised a market to be held on a Saturday, which helped increase trade in the area, furthered by easy access to the town granted by the rivers. The town grew from here, and we'll talk about how she has changed and developed over the course of just over 900 years. However, there is a darker side to the town as well, and we'll talk about the first instance of this right now. As part of the Norman Conquest, the first Jewish settlers arrived in England, but, as seems to be a recurring theme in the history of the Jewish peoples, they were not made welcome. And in 1189, a series of massacres against them occurred across the country. It started following an attack on a group of the leaders of the Jewish community in England, who were expelled from the coronation of Richard I at Westminster in September 1189. Following their expulsion, they were attacked by the crowds, and somehow a rumour was then spread that the king had ordered a massacre of the Jews. Lynn was not exempt from this, and the entire Jewish population of the then village was exterminated. After Richard I had left for the Crusades, there were riots in Lynn. A Jewish citizen had been baptised into Christianity, which angered the Jews. They then tried to attack them, but he took refuge in a church, known as taking sanctuary. The villagers reacted to this attack by setting fire to the Jewish homesteads and putting them all to the sword.
Moving on to the 1300s, and dear little Lynn was counted as the most important port in England. At the time, the Hanseatic League was trading from the Baltic Sea, more or less dominated sea trade in Europe, and the east coast of England benefited from this. Lynn more than most, and the links are still present today. They're celebrated through the King's Lynn Hanse Festival. A lot of the buildings constructed as part of the trade with the Hanseatic League are visible in Lynn today, including the Trinity Guildhall, which was rebuilt in around 1421 after a fire destroyed the original building. There is also the Guildhall of St George, which is now used as a theatre, which is the largest and oldest in England, and I've performed there I don't know how many times. So cool. And it can be claimed amongst its accolades that Shakespeare himself performed there and Henry VIII visited. So basically I'm Shakespeare.
Yes, you are?
Yeah. Walls were constructed around the town, with the main entrance point with the main entrance points being the south and east gates. The east gate and surrounding walls are mostly ruins now, but the gatehouse itself can be seen in the country park known as the Walks. The south gate is still a main point of entry into the town, with traffic passing through it constantly, often slowly.
Yeah, I still flinch when I see a bus going through the gate.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it will fit, but it does.
Yeah, it does.
The trade warehouse of the Hansa House and Marriott's warehouses are still active parts of the community, with Hansa House being used for weddings, hence the one I was speaking about earlier, the hungover, and corporate events, and Marriott's warehouse is a restaurant. Merchant and Mayor of Lynn in 1510, Thomas Thoresby, he commissioned the building of the Thoresby College, which was built to house priests from the Guild of the Holy Trinity. That was initially incorporated as a guild in 1453. The town acquired a mayor in 1524, and things seemed to be going quite well. Then in 1536, the dissolution of the monasteries happened. This is where my bae, Henry VIII, decided he didn't want to be married to Catherine of Aragon anymore, and would instead prefer him a slice of that there Boleyn girl. In amongst the assets seized from the churches and religious institutions across the country, Henry took control of the little Bishop's Lynn and turned it into... Why are you giving me these words, especially today, Carrie?
Sorry, he turned it from Lynn Episcopi, which is Bishop's Lynn, to Lynn Regis, which is...
known henceforth as King's Lynn. The following year, the Benedictine Priory and 3 friars in the town were closed down. Whilst Catholicism was declining, education became a priority when in 1534 a grammar school was founded in the town that still stands in some form today, although it is known as one of the 3 high schools in King's Lynn as King Edward VII Academy, or KES.
Alright, okay.
Yeah. I didn't go to KES, but I know, obviously, loads of people went to KES. It was our rival school.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's cool. It has 2 lions on the gates.
Yeah, they do look pretty impressive, to be fair.
Yeah. As the plague swept through Europe again and again, King's Lynn succumbed with the rest of the population. It was hit worst in 1516, 1587, 1597 and 1636, with the last outbreak being the Great Plague in 1665. During the English Civil War, she declared for Parliament initially, changing sides in August 1643 to coincide with the change in local government. This change led to a reaction from Parliament, and they laid siege to the town. Lynn held out for 3 long weeks before surrendering.
That's not bad for an entire town to hold out for 3 weeks.
So I just have to have a drink in my life.
No, it's fine.
There is a long history of mystery and the occult here in Lynn. And you can see part of this in the Stories of Lynn, which is an exhibit ongoing at the Town Hall and the Borough Archives, up near what is known as the Saturday Marketplace, which is where, oddly enough, the old market used to be held on a Saturday, and the Church of St Margaret's still stands, which is what you spoke about earlier.
Yep.
If you check out our blog,
Which
now...
now called A Nice Cup of Hister Tea 2, so we've changed that.
Finally,
The new URL is cupofhistertea, all one word, .wordpress.com.
Nice plug, Carrie.
Thank you.
You can see an entry we did about the Heritage Day in Lynn that tells you of exhibits that you can see here. One of the things we've learnt recently, however, is the impact of the witch hunts in East Anglia. For those not native to England, East Anglia is the area that encompasses the counties of Cambridgeshire, Suffolk, Norfolk, Essex, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire. There were several witch trials throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, but the most activity is recorded in the mid-17th century under puritanical rule and the watchful eye of one Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder General.
Boo. Hiss.
Well, didn't you say he's the one person that you dislike more than Oliver Cromwell?
More than Oliver Cromwell and more than Margaret Beaufort, I cannot stand Matthew Hopkins. I mean, he wasn't even a general or anything. He styled himself as the Witchfinder General. He's responsible for mass hysteria and death of innocent people. I mean, whether or not witches are real, it's just... What he did was... It was unacceptable. It was inexcusable. and I really hope that he's currently being tormented in whatever hell there is by a load of witches.
But you've got to hand it to him. He's not that dissimilar to what some people do nowadays. And I can't think of a modern day celebrity that's like that. But he's seen something that causes hysteria. He's pretending to find a way to get rid of this by being paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't stand the man. Every time I see his picture or hear his name, my blood boils a little bit.
Witch.
Probably, yeah. Probably somewhere down the line related to him, I don't know. We're including in the show notes a source that lists all of the recorded witches accused during the witch hunts of the 17th century, and we would encourage you to take a look. But here are the names of the ones accused in King's Lynn in just 1646. Catherine Banks, Lydia Brown, Thomas Dempster, so men and women, Emma Godfrey, Dorothy Griffin, Dorothy Lee, Thomasina Parker, Cecily Taylor, and Grace Wright. Out of the 9 of them, 6 were found not guilty, and 1 deemed not mentally fit to be tried, or non-compos mentis as the term is. Dorothy Lee and Grace Wright, however, were both found guilty and hanged. We'll probably do the witch trials in more detail at some point, but some of the methods that they had for interrogation were really, really bad. I mean, at this point in 1646, trial by torture had actually been outlawed, but that didn't stop them from doing things like swimming, where they would tie your hands and feet together and throw you in a river. And if you drowned, then you were innocent, but you were dead. And if you rose to the surface, then the water was rejecting your unholy form in a sort of a reverse baptism, and you'd be taken out and either burnt, beheaded, or hanged.
Yeah, we mentioned the Stories of Lynn exhibit that's going on at the moment. There is actually a 17th century dunking stool that was probably used by Matthew Hopkins that you can still see today.
Probably. Hopkins himself was actually present at those trials and gave evidence against 3 of the accused, and he was paid £17 for his time and effort. So he wasn't just doing it out of the goodness of his black little heart.
No.
He was also invited by locals in other trials in the region, and doubtless many innocent men and women were put to death on little more than his spurious word.
This wasn't the only witch trial, however, and executions by hanging and burning had been happening for decades in the town of King's Lynn, with the earliest recorded possible execution being one Mother Gabley, hanged in 1583. We'll tell you the story of the demise of one particular witch at the end of today's show.
Trade with the New World from the late 16th century onwards had a negative impact on poor old Lynn, however. Iron and timber did continue to be imported, and as we said before, her links with the Hanseatic League remain to this day. But the ports along the western coast of England and London flourished with these new trade links, leaving East Anglia to bring up the rear. Wine from ports in Spain, France and Portugal increased over the course of the next century, as trade by sea was much more cost-effective than trade by land, piracy notwithstanding. And the northeast of England ferried huge quantities of coal down the coast, so while she didn't have the success of sister ports such as Liverpool along the west coast, Lynn was by no means forgotten. Now, a lot of East Anglia is flat marshland, so much so that when the Danish Vikings invaded, they actually nicknamed the locals frogs.
Fab.
Yeah. And many a man, woman and king has fallen afoul of the area known as the Fens, which is a vast area no more than 10 metres above sea level, consisting of peat marsh, and with it sometimes actually being below sea level. It's the lowest lying land in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, which is actually when the whole global warming thing happens. You know, the actual global warming.
What, you mean the global warming that doesn't exist?
Yeah, that thing. Yeah. East Anglia is going to be the first to be submerged because of this.
I moved from Birmingham with her 7 hills to come over here to the wetlands.
Yep.
Wow, I'm moving back. The area is often liable to flooding, particularly in winter, and water would race out towards the estuary which provides the boundary between the counties of Norfolk and Lincolnshire, known locally as the Wash. Did you know, Em, that it was actually originally woodland thousands of years ago, around here? It was because of the melting of a glacier that the woodland was flooded and the silty marshland was formed. Did you know that?
I actually didn't. That's great.
So all this used to be forest.
That's very strange, considering. Yeah.
I mean, you can stand on top of a building in Norfolk and see for miles around.
Yeah, literally. hundred of miles, you can see,
Yeah.
in a circle.
And to think, I mean, you can see the curvature of the Earth on the horizon at some point, I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, sorry, flat earthers. But, yeah, it's... To think that all used to be forest is a bit weird. As far as the eye can see.
Right?
There have been settlements found in the area, uncovered during periods of drought, that date back to the Mesolithic era,
Mm-hmm.
all the way through the Romans to the Iceni tribe of Boudica fame, and right through to the Middle Ages. Evidence of some of the earlier Bronze Age settlements can be seen at Flag Fen, which is, I think it's partway between here and Peterborough, isn't it? In the mid-1600s, the draining of the fens started to make way for an increase in agriculture, and large quantities of crops were grown to feed the increasing populations of the developing cities like London. Lynn remained a major fishing port in the centre of this, now adding shipbuilding and glassmaking to her resume. Brewing also boomed, because where there are workers, there must be beer, and where there is beer in industry, there must be coin. So, in 1784, King's Lynn got her first bank.
Hey! Because of beer, I love it.
Yep. But, in amongst the prosperity, there was still some Dark Age brutality, particularly in the form of crime and punishment. Again, something covered in the Stories of Lynn exhibition, where you can see the stocks and pillories used, along with the cells, and a flogging post and stake for those witches we mentioned earlier. King's Lynn was also the site of execution at the gallows near Southgates of the youngest person in recorded history, when in 1708 young Michael Hammond, aged only 7 years old, was sentenced to hang by the neck until dead alongside his 11-year-old sister Anne after stealing a loaf of bread.
Wow.
All things considered, Jean Valjean got off lightly.
Yeah, he didn't come from Lynn, that's why.
Their execution was presided over by one Sir Robert Walpole, Member of Parliament for the area and the first Prime Minister. Not that that was much comfort to the poor wee children.
I didn't actually know that. I'm quite disgusted that happened. 7 years old.
Yeah.
God, we were horrible.
I mean, occasionally for theft you get your hand cut off or an ear nailed to the pillory and things like that. But yeah, 7-year-old hanged for stealing a loaf of bread.
Probably because they were orphaned, hungry.
Yep.
Living on the streets.
Yep. Sad.
In the mid-16th century, the Tuesday marketplace began to host trade fairs, which attracted a lot of international interest. Over time, these developed into a fun fair and then became a single annual event known as the Mart, which is still held to this very day, starting on the 14th of February and lasting for about a fortnight. It is testament to the local inventor, Frederick Savage, who is credited with creating the moving mechanism that makes the fun fair ride, the carousel, possible. So, every carousel you have in the world is credited to a guy from King's Lynn.
See, I didn't know that until I moved down here.
Nope. It's quite a fitting tribute, really.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I took you to your first Mart. Obviously, I've gone every year since I was born. I've been 30 times to the Mart. And did you know that the Mart was actually has to be on those days, on the 14th, because of Henry VIII?
I did not know that.
Henry VIII, and every year they read the charter. At the opening of the Mart, the mayor reads the charter.
Yeah.
And it's the same charter that was read because of Henry VIII, stating that on the 14th of February, for at least 14 days, there will be a Mart held in King's Lynn on the Tuesday marketplace.
Wow. That I did not know.
Yeah, so it has to be. It's like law. Henry VIII put it in.
See, I knew that there was some ceremony surrounding the opening of the Mart and that the mayor was always involved, but I thought that was just like a local thing because the mayor seems to be involved in everything here.
Nope. Because of Henry VIII, we have a fun fair.
Woo!
And it's really cool. What did you think when you first came to the Mart?
I mean, I've been to fun fairs and things in Birmingham, but they always seemed a little bit small compared to the Mart. I mean, the Mart is massive. We used to work in offices on the Tuesday marketplace, and when the Mart was ongoing, you couldn't hear yourself think. As soon as the door opened, it was like a wall of sound. Yeah. But it's a fantastic place. You know, there's loads of people that everyone goes. Thousands and thousands of people go through it. Yeah. And aside from like disrupting parking and things, it brings a lot of tourism and things to. It does. To the centre of Lynn, and it's really good. I loved it the first time I've been. I've only been, I think, twice in the five 5, nearly 6 years that I've been here. But, yeah, no, it was really, really good.
Yeah, it's obviously not ran or used for the same purposes as it was when Henry VIII chartered for it. It used to be where people used to come and sell things.
Yeah.
But now it is a fun fair.
Yeah, purely a fun fair.
Yeah, with the rides and the hooker ducks and the...
Yeah, and that big one that whizzes people up and down that you can see from the outskirts of town, and you can hear the people screaming. And that weird one that's always got a laughing baby that is so creepy.
Yeah, and clowns everywhere.
Yeah, clowns.
Anyways, but Frederick Savage is not the only notable person born and raised in King's Lynn. Some of you might have heard indirectly of one George Vancouver, born in 1757. An officer of the Royal Navy, he commanded an expedition between 1791 and 1795 to explore and charter the northwest Pacific coast of the Americas, as well as the Hawaiian Islands and the southwest coast of Australia. Not a short expedition, really.
No, not at all.
No. As a result of his life and his work, he has a few things named after him in the town, not just in the town but in the world. These include Vancouver Island and Vancouver City in British Columbia, Vancouver in Washington, and 3 Mount Vancouvers in Yukon, Alaska and New Zealand. He also has a statue located in the Purfleet Quay at King's Lynn, arm outstretched pointing towards Vancouver, Canada. They've also named the shopping centre here after him too, which is nice.
Yeah.
The Vancouver Quarter.
Vancouver Quarter. They've got nice butchers there.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No, I didn't realise the links between Lynn and Canada or anything, or Lynn and Vancouver at that point. I thought Vancouver was just a name. I didn't realise it was named after a person.
Yeah.
Until I moved here. But yeah, they've got the statue there, and yeah, pretty cool. Towards the end of the 1700s, however, King's Lynn had hit a bit of a rough patch, and things stayed this way until about 1847, when the newfangled railway finally reached the area, linking the town to the arterial networks of the Great Eastern Railway and the Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway companies. These services continued to run until the end of the 1950s, and now a single station serves the town and has many distinguished visitors arriving and departing, including Her Majesty the Queen, who arrives at the station once a year for her annual trip to Sandringham House. Sandringham House itself was actually purchased by Queen Victoria for a grand total of £22,000 in, when was it, 1860... It was 1864? Yeah. It was intended to be used by her son Prince Albert as his family home. The existing house was demolished and replaced in 1869. Albert and his wife Princess Alexandra of Denmark lived here until it was damaged in 1892 by fire, at which point it was repaired and then enlarged. You know, why not build on the original?
Mm-hmm.
The house played host to Queen Victoria herself at various points throughout her reign, specifically in 1871, when Prince Albert was dangerously ill with typhoid fever, from which he later recovered. George V and his wife, Queen Mary, lived there from 1925, and he referred to it as the place I love better than anywhere else in the world.
It is gorgeous.
I've never actually been inside the house. I've been to the grounds. I have never actually seen the house or been inside it.
You can go inside it. I think it's like £24.
Doesn't Prince Charles want to, when he becomes king, he wants to close it off to the public though?
I don't know.
I think he might do. So I've got a limited amount of time then. Your Majesty, if you can please just hang on for long enough for me to go see Sandringham, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. All the best. It was also, George stayed there until his death, and it was also the place of death for King George VI. It's now used as a Christmas residence of Queen Elizabeth II, and she goes there in December until the anniversary of her father's death on the 6th of February. Both she and her father, George VI, record their Christmas speeches at Sandringham House, which is about 10 minutes down the road from where we're currently sitting.
It is, and I saw them this Christmas.
You did. You saw her getting off the train, didn't you?
I saw her getting off the train in December. I saw her getting back on the train in February, and I also went to Sandringham on Christmas Day as part of when I used to work for a newspaper as part of the press.
Yeah, they.
So I got to see all of them except for the Duke of Edinburgh and Camilla. They were poorly.
Oh, but you saw George and Charlotte and Louis, didn't you?
No, the children weren't there this year.
Were they not?
They think George's first year will be this year because he'll be 6.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but But Kate did stood very close to my sister and mentioned how the children were at home playing with their new toys. So they obviously get up really early and open their toys, just presents pretty much like any other family.
Oh, that's so cute.
And you also mentioned about the train.
Yep.
The Queen has her own entrance and exit onto the train. There's a gate, which is a little further up from where the public can enter, and it's got the coat of arms.
Okay.
You know that when any business uses...
Yeah.
They have that, what's it called?
The Royal Coat of Arms.
Yeah, that's it. Above the gate, and it's only for the Queen to use to get in and off the train.
Oh. So what would happen if a normal person walked through that gate?
It's always locked unless the Queen's there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to that train station about 12 times and I've never noticed it.
Yeah. And talking of people of notable who come from King's Lynn,
Yeah.
have you heard of the band Queen?
I have indeed.
Roger Taylor, the drummer, was born and raised in King's Lynn.
He was indeed. Didn't he have a flat just above what's now the HMV?
Yeah, he used to live above HMV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only until he was I think it was 7 or 8, and then moved. But yeah, Roger Taylor was born here.
Yeah, how strange. And Stephen Fry lives not far from here.
No, Stephen Fry lives literally 10 minutes the opposite direction of Sandringham where we're sitting now.
It's just weird to think that you could just go pop to the local Tesco and just see Stephen Fry.
He does. He uses the Tesco's at Hardwick.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. And Kate used the range. Kate Middleton. Imagine just being shopping, like trying to get some Christmas lights from the range, and just Kate Middleton's Kate Middleton's just there buying. Apparently, George had a tantrum because he wanted this little toy plane.
Wow, even royal kids.
Right? The town museum and library opened within a year of each other at the start of the 20th century, and the Majestic Cinema was opened in 1928, starting life as a theatre before being converted into the cinema that it is now, losing none of its charm in the process.
It's a beautiful building.
Mm-hmm. You actually, you've obviously, when I took you for the first time, the cinema screen is still basically where the curtains would be, and it's still got the stage.
Yeah, it's still got the stage down the front, so you're sitting far back, and the seating is still theatre seating. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that being a theatre person, as well as a history person.
Yes.
In January 1915, King's Lynn became a casualty of the First World War, when Zeppelin L4, under the command of Captain Lieutenant Magnus von Platen... Carrie, I'm not okay today.
Captain Lieutenant Magnus von Platen-Hallemund.
Yeah, that dude. Dropped a total of 11 bombs on the town. There were 2 casualties and several people were injured. It was struck again several times in World War II, despite being deemed safe enough to be a site for displaced evacuees from London. In the aftermath of the Second World War, industry once again began to grow, with Campbell setting up a soup-making factory in the town, and the construction of industrial estates bringing new business and work to the town. Fishing is still a mainstay of the population, though, and the cockles and whelks caught and processed here are shipped as far away as Japan and Korea.
So it's still, for a small town, it still has a global impact.
It does. Work has been ongoing in recent years to regenerate the town and bring a more modern spin to bear amongst the historic architecture and roots. You can walk through a modern shopping centre with coffee shops, high-end fashion, and then turn a corner and come face to face with medieval architecture and cobbled streets. Twinned with Emmerich am Rhein in Germany, Sandringham in Melbourne, Australia, and Malda Bosley in the Czech Republic, King's Lynn is a town that embraces its history as much as it faces its future, and to us, it's home. Aww. What do you think of King's Lynn, Carrie? Obviously, I dragged you here. For people who don't know, Carrie and I met at university when we were both studying in Coventry. Carrie is originally from Birmingham. I've lived in King's Lynn I'm 30 years old, and I had a year in Canada, in Vancouver, which I actually didn't know had a link with King's Lynn when I moved to Canada.
Okay.
But yes, I've been here 30 years, and I dragged Carrie to live with me down in the good old Norfolk countryside. What do you reckon, Carrie?
To be honest with you, before then, my dad spent some time in Norfolk as a child, like growing up as a teenager. But up until I met you, I'd never actually heard of King's Lynn. I'd probably driven through it when I was visiting family, but I've never heard of it. And I just remember coming here to visit you the one time, and we were just sitting on the quay, And I realised how much I loved it here. It's a much slower pace of life to the city. The history is everywhere. You can feel the history around you. It's fantastic, and the way that it's not hidden away. Like in Birmingham, you have to go out of your way to find the history. It's there's a couple of hidden gems here and there, but here it's everywhere. They still use the historic courthouses. The old the town hall and the jailhouse are still there. The churches are still there. It's a remarkable place for its history and the preservation of that history as well. And the fact that one of the first things we did when I came down here was go on a town walk where we were told all about it. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant how it's embraced, and the people are nice and friendly and open. It's very much, for a town, it's very bustling. It has the feel of a city to it in parts, but there's still that rural mentality. And you just have to step out like 2-3 paces outside of town. You're surrounded by fields and forest and lakes, and it's just such a beautiful place. It's got a unique charm to it. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an absolutely lovely place, and I'm glad I moved here.
Well, I'm glad I brought you here. I don't think I appreciated it as much when I was younger.
No.
I think when I became about 17, 18, when we had cars, and me and my friends, if it was sunny, we literally could just go 20 minutes down the road, would be at Hunstanton, which is at the coast, on the sand, in the sea, at a beach.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things for me, coming from the heartlands of the country, actually called the heartlands. If you want to go to the beach, it takes about an hour and a half drive, or the local radio station just used to put a massive sandpit in the city centre and play music there. That was our equivalent of a beach, next to a fountain,
Yeah.
So having the actual sea 20 minutes down the road from me, although good luck risking the traffic getting down there on a bank holiday.
Well, yeah.
But that is weird to me, and the fact that you can smell when the catch comes in on a Tuesday, and
that isn't always the best thing.
No. And the river that runs through town is a tidal river. It's insane. It's weird.
It is, and no, I really love the history. And we were talking not that long ago because we were driving through the town, mm-hmm. and it's almost like the further away you get from the centre, you can almost pinpoint the streets of the decade in which they were born.
Yeah.
Not decades, or century, because you got a lot of 11th, 12th, 14th century right in the centre, mm-hmm. and then you can always tell when 15th century houses, 16th century. We can actually see when the Stuarts. You can see the houses which are Stuart influences.
Yeah. And then the 1950s fisherman cottages, and the post-war boom houses. Mm-hmm. And it's weird. The further you get out, it's like a radius. If you were to just draw a map, it would just be circles, wouldn't it, around the town?
Yeah, and we're kind of where we are. We're still in the town centre, mm-hmm. but we're in the 1980s, 1917, 80s portion of the town.
It's where I work pretty much in the town centre.
Yeah.
And my office building is new. It's a new office building. But I look out of my window on one side and I see St Nicholas Chapel, which wasn't that like 1100s Norman chapel? And then I look out the window the other side and I see the Lattice House, which is a pub that was built in 1500s. So I'm just and I'm standing there in a modern office building at a printer, and I've got the 1100s and the 1500s either side of me, and thinking, okay, this is happening.
Yep.
That's what I love about it. The fact that you do that. You'll see the new and the modern. You see people going around in cars and motorbikes, just whizzing past like a 14th century building. You're like, what?
I do sometimes feel that a lot of people don't either know how historical the town is. Mm. She is, and we explore it quite a lot. Like, if anything goes on, because we have quite a lot of historical things that go on in Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
We pop along on our Instagram, story everything, like we've done when we do the 1940s days, mm-hmm. or when we go to the battle reenactments at Castle Rising, or the Hanseatic Festival.
I've never actually been to the Hansa Festival.
We'll go. It was a couple of weeks ago, so we'll have to go next year.
Okay.
And the Heritage Days, but we normally blog those, and they're all on our Instagram. So you'll hear and see a lot more about Kings Lynn, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we'll try and get out to the local area as well, because we've done like Blickling Hall and things, but we want to try and fan out a little bit and show you a bit more of East Anglia, because as a whole, it is a very, very historic place, dating back to the Iceni tribe.
I was about to say, that's what I want to go to, the Iceni village.
Iceni village. It's Nelson's County. You've got the whole thing with the Danish invasion here, the Great Heathen Horde.
Mm-hmm.
We're here. It's just an incredible, incredible country.
Yeah, county.
Could be a country in its own right. Why not?
Oh yeah, it was known as Witch Country.
Yes, and we'll come back to the witches in a second.
We will.
But for now, it's the ridiculous death section. We've got 2 for you this week, as a treat. The first is ridiculous, and though the cause originated in King's Lynn, the death didn't actually occur here. So we're kind of half claiming
But
it.
we do have a really expensive statue because of it.
Yeah, really expensive.
And really pointless.
And a nice cup.
Yeah, we have a cup.
Yeah, we have a cup. This is the story of King John I of England. The only King John of England.
What a disaster.
I'm not going to... No.
Say it, Carrie.
We're restrained by Magna Carta.
Oh.
Right. Born 24th of December, 1166. King of England from 1199 till 1216. He's probably best known for losing the Duchy of Normandy and most of France to King Philip II of France and causing the collapse of the Angevin Empire. He's also known for the revolt of the barons, which resulted in the signing of this little piece of paper. Perhaps you've heard of it, the Magna Carta?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the English legal constitution and the entire American constitution are largely based on it. Possibly.
He wasn't the greatest.
No. We'll no doubt shine the spotlight on poor, unlucky John in a later episode, but it is needless to say that his reign was somewhat fraught with disaster. It's John's ruthless nature and overtaxation of his subjects that gave rise to the stories of legendary Nottingham outlaw Robin of Locksley, better known as Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
As a punishment for the barons that revolted against him, John embarked on a series of surprisingly successful sieges against them. He then embarked on a campaign against rebel ally Alexander II of Scotland. Meanwhile, the barons applied to Prince Louis of France to aid their cause due to his claim to the throne through blood. John sent a fleet to intercept him, but was met with difficulty by the British coastal weather. Good old British weather.
Yep.
And failed to stop Louis landing in England. He then lost a lot of support to the rebels and lost much of southeast England to them. In September 1216, he renewed his attack, heading east towards East Anglia. He relieved the town of Lincoln, where rebels were laying siege, before he pressed on to King's Lynn, from where he would be able to resupply. It was here that he contracted dysentery.
I shouldn't laugh, I just find...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things then went from bad to worse for him. Forced to travel back west, disaster struck as he crossed the fens. His caravan succumbed to the marshy terrain and a lot of his belongings were lost in the wash, including the crown jewels.
Locally, we still say that his crown jewels are in the wash. They
Yeah.
probably aren't, you know.
They're probably out at sea by now.
Probably.
Unable to reclaim them, he continued to Newark Castle, growing increasingly ill and weak. He couldn't travel any further, and on the night somewhere between 18th and 19th of October 1216, John died. Rumours circulated that it was poison, others that it was a surfeit of peaches. All that we truly know is that the King of Disaster essentially shit himself to death.
Because of an illness he caught in King's Lynn.
Yes.
And the statue that we said about is in the middle of the town centre.
Yeah.
And it's a statue of King John standing there holding, I think it's supposed to be like a satchel of money.
Yeah.
But it looks like a fish.
It does, to be fair, it's not well carved.
No, and of all the people that we could have a statue of in the centre of the town...
I mean, the cup that we've referred to is...
Oh yeah, the King John cup.
Yeah, the King John cup. That was gifted to Lynn, wasn't it? And it is quite a spectacular cup.
It's in the Stories of Lynn.
Yeah. But, you know, it's like he gave us a cup, we gave him the shits. And he
Welcome
died.
to King's Lynn!
He essentially purged his body, and yeah, he died from that, and travelling, and illness, and weather, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if you don't have the Constitution, don't come to Lynn.
Yeah, but also just to be completely, obviously not like so we can say, if you do look this up of King John at this time, the town was called Bishop's Lynn.
Yeah, Bishop's
because
Lynn.
it didn't become King's Lynn until 1536.
Yeah,
but we'll obviously call it King's Lynn.
Yeah, just so that you know where we still are.
Yeah. But we did promise one more thing earlier on in this episode. We've had the ridiculous death, but now we're going to tell a local legend. This is the story of Margaret Reed. In the centre of King's Lynn is the Tuesday Marketplace, which we have mentioned earlier, so named, oddly, because the town was granted permission to hold a market there on, you guessed it, a Tuesday.
Yay!
Which is, we're very good naming things in King's Lynn. You've got the Saturday Marketplace and the Tuesday Marketplace.
Yep. Wow. Imagination.
Ah, yeah, we're full of it. This was the Tuesday Marketplace was also the site where public justice was meted out. So lots of executions were done on the Tuesday Marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
In 1590, Lynn local Margaret Reed was accused, tried, and found guilty of witchcraft, and her sentence was to be burnt at the stake on the Tuesday Marketplace. Despite pleading her innocence, her execution was set, and she swore that she would be avenged on the people who had accused her. As her body burned at the stake, the flames engulfed her chest, and her heart burst through her ribcage, flying out and striking the house of the chief magistrate responsible for condemning her.
Ooh.
Yeah, that building is now numbers 15 and 16 Tuesday Marketplace, and a small wrought iron heart can be seen above one of the upper windows, marking the spot where the heart supposedly struck.
Mm.
Yep, and rumour has it that a poltergeist now roams these halls. Could it be the spirit of Margaret Reed looking for her revenge?
Could be.
Could be. We used to work in one of the adjoining buildings at number 17, now the site of the Lynn News offices, and there are many strange goings-ons there. Maybe, just maybe, there's something to this story.
Yeah, there were a lot of times when you would be working alone in the building, completely alone, and you'd hear furniture and things moving upstairs.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just us, a lot of other members of staff reported strange
and
things happening.
I've spoken to a couple of people who work at the Lynn News since we left the building, and they say that they felt things, heard things,
Yes, things
felt
that go,
uneasy.
Yeah, things go bump in the night, or the day, or the morning, you know.
Yeah, whenever.
Yeah, shut up, fussy.
But yeah, that the heart above the window.
Yeah.
Massive local story about the witch who's some legends of it have, instead of her being burnt at the stake, have had her being boiled alive in a cauldron and her heart. But it always is her heart bursts out of her chest, hits above the window.
And that happened to be where the chief magistrate was living at the time.
Almost like a curse.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do we know what actually became of the chief magistrate? If there was anything strange that happened to him, or?
No, nothing's ever normally said about him.
That would be interesting to know.
We shall have to research it, and we'll just add a little tidbit on the end of next week's episode.
We shall. So, that's it.
Yeah, so that's King's Lynn in a nutshell.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed your little audio tour of the history of Lynn.
I do apologise again for my broken voice.
No, it wasn't too bad.
You say that, but when we listen back, you know it's going to sound worse than it.
Yeah,
than it
probably.
is, because we obviously tested the microphones, and it sounded worse than.
Yeah, true.
We weren't going to do a disclaimer. Then we heard my voice, and I was like, nope.
Yep.
I need to tell the people that I'm not ill. I'm just self-inflicted.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
So, if podcasts are kind of your thing, and you want to maybe branch out a little bit more from history, we do know a couple of nerds that have their own podcast, and they talk about all sorts of things from the world of nerds, including most recently Game of Thrones and Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, they so some friends of ours, Lee and Mandy and Tobias Nichols.
Yep.
They have a podcast called
The Manic Podcast.
Yes, and they have recently given their kind of review on Game of Thrones and Endgame.
Yeah. Their podcast comes out every fortnight on a Tuesday, and I believe the next episode is due next Tuesday?
A week this coming...
A week this coming Tuesday. So keep an eye out for it. We'll put a link in our show notes. And we do highly recommend it. Not just because they're our friends, but it is a very good podcast.
Yeah, they're fun, and they're very knowledgeable on everything they talk about. Almost like we are with history. They are in with their nerdy stuff.
And they're very entertaining.
They are. But thank you for listening, and we shall speak with you next Tuesday.
Goodbye.